the Scottish election, of course, on May the 6th, arguably the most consequential of all the elections around the UK taking place that day. Ms Sturgeon looking for a majority, 65 seats, which she thinks would then give her an overwhelming case for another independence referendum. Sarah Smith, our Scotland editor, is on the line. And when you look at the Daily Telegraph, we were talking about in the newspaper review, Natwest plots to move HQ if Scots vote to leave the UK. Natwest, of course, the historic Royal Bank of Scotland. You see people beginning to focus on some of the detail.
Yes, you do. And there is a particular issue for banks, and it should be said that Natwest did say that they are neutral on the issue of Scottish independence. They say that's up to the Scottish people to decide. But they have said that in the event of an independent Scotland, their balance sheet would be too big for an independent Scottish economy, and so they would need to move to London. The Tories have seized on this, saying it just shows how devastating Scottish independence could be for Scottish jobs and business, because NatWest do employ 10,000 staff in Scotland. But I have to say, this came up in the 2014 referendum as well, when they were the Royal Bank of Scotland. And the then chief executive did say that in the event of independence, the bank would need to move its HQ to London for the same reason, because of the size of its balance sheet. But he made clear at the time it would be what they call a brass plate change. They would just change where their registered headquarters are, but there wouldn't be a wholesale movement of jobs. So this may not make a huge amount of difference either to the operation of the bank or the people who work for it in Scotland, but it is it's ammunition for the opponents of independence to say that it wouldn't be good for Scottish
Another
business.
thing that they're using as ammunition is the question about the border and what would happen to the border. And Nicola Sturgeon giving an interesting interview this week to the Irish Times.
Yes, when she said that the Brexit agreement with Northern Ireland could be a template for how an independent Scotland could trade with the rest of the UK, because it's her ambition that an independent Scotland would be inside the European Union. Of course, the rest of the UK would not be, and that could cause all sorts of issues on the border and raise the question of whether there would need to be customs posts or border checks between Scotland and England, which would be politically very controversial. She sees in the Northern Ireland Protocol some ways in which you could make trade a little bit easier, but her opponents have seized on this, saying it just shows that she doesn't understand the complexities of the situation. There are lots of ways in which, of course, Northern Ireland is rather different. It's treated as being in the single market for goods, for instance, and there's so many complications as to how Scotland inside the EU and a post-Brexit UK would trade, that this is going to become, I think, one of the most difficult issues for the SNP as they argue in favour of independence.
Another issue about which there are some rumblings, and that's NATO, and specifically the future of NATO's nuclear weapons and indeed Britain's nuclear deterrent, based at the moment, of course, in Scotland. What is the SNP's position on that?
Well, they have been very clear. They talk about removing nuclear weapons from Scotland if they are able to achieve independence. They say that Faslane, where the nuclear submarines are based, would be repurposed as the headquarters for the Scottish Armed Forces without nuclear weapons there. But this is a really big deal, because there is not another suitable deepwater port in the United Kingdom to just move the nuclear submarines to. So this becomes very, very tricky for the United Kingdom. So there have been suggestions that maybe Scotland could lease the port and give uninterrupted access to Scottish waters for Trident subs, and that they could make a lot of money doing that. They could possibly fund the whole of the Scottish Defence Force doing that by charging hundreds of millions of pounds a year to the UK to keep its nuclear subs in Scotland. But the membership of the SNP are very anti-nuclear weapons. It would be very, very difficult for the leadership to say that there would be effectively no change to the nuclear subs at Faslane, because it is one of the great campaigning cries for SNP membership, that they would be able to rid Scotland of nuclear weapons. And so, although this would become obviously a pivotal point in any negotiations between Scotland and the rest of the UK about the terms on which it was going to leave, it would be very difficult, I think, for the SNP to commit to any long-term future for nuclear weapons.
We'll see what Nicola Sturgeon does say at 8:10. Sarah Smith, thanks.